It's a must-see Fox News interview. Bret Baier pressing Vice President Kamala Harris on everything from the border to the economy during her first formal sit-down interview with Fox News.
So with less than 3 weeks to Election Day, the Democratic nominee was asked about her steady defense of President Biden's mental fitness.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room, and he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
So it was a tense interview at times as the vice president tried to dodge some questions and point the blame toward Donald Trump. And Bret says he had to quickly wrap up the interview after her team signaled him to stop.
There are critics who look at what the administration did and think differently. Madam Vice President, they're wrapping me very hard here. I hope you got to say what you wanted to say about Donald Trump. There are a lot of things.
There's more to say. I have much more to say.
Madam Vice President, and they're giving me a hard rap.
Well, I thank you for the time.
They were giving him a big rap. So that is how the interview ended after 26 minutes. Now let's show you how it started with tough, direct questions on the border, the kind she has not faced before.
How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but do you just a number? Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions.
I'm not finished. We have
it's a rough estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question. I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. So, looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate Remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
The first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the... Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please?
But
you have to let me finish,
You
please.
had the White House and the House and the Senate, and they didn't bring up that bill.
I'm in the middle of responding to the point you're raising, and I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
We recognized from day one that to the point of this being your first question, it is a priority for us as a nation and for the American people. And our focus has been on fixing a problem.
So here's the hard part. Bret only has, I think, 25 to 26 minutes for an interview. If you allow the person that you're interviewing to monologue, you won't get to the substance. And so I think he had to balance asking a tough question and letting her repeat the talking points instead of just getting to the point of the substance of the question. A lot of times she talked in circles and she wasn't really answering the question. So he had to inject the facts, bring her back to her record, and then give her a chance to respond. But she never really answered any of the questions. Most of the time it was deflecting to Donald Trump.
Well, she continuously talks about that U.S. Citizenship Act, acting like we were trying to do something for the border. But then Bret last night said that would have given 11 million illegals amnesty, a pathway to citizenship. It's called the U.S. Citizenship Act. And so that didn't pass. Congress did not pass that, even though Congress, he said, Democrats had the control of the House and the Senate. But that's not what people wanted. People wanted the situation at the border fixed. They didn't want to give a pathway of citizenship to 11 million people.
So he asked a bunch of questions that she did not answer, and usually she would just deflect to Donald Trump. There was one thing that we did hear last night that was new. In 2019, when she was running for president, she said that she would decriminalize southern border crossers. Last night, she said essentially she would follow the law and she would not decriminalize border crossers. So that was new. Unfortunately, it comes too late for a number of American families. At one point, Bret asked whether or not the administration and Kamala Harris owes an apology to the families of victims who were murdered by people who came into this country illegally. We have told you the story of Rachel Morin. Patty Morin, her mother, was on with us about 45 minutes ago, and she was very clear. She blames this administration for the death of that woman, her daughter, Rachel, who was 37. Here's Patty, the mother, with us.
And I've talked to people that have lost children, and they said the pain never goes away, that I'm going to walk with it the rest of my life. That's an unbearable thing. I want to feel happy again, and I don't know how to do that. It's like, this should not be. And if they had secured the borders, and just American people should come first. That's why we elect these officials, to protect our country, not to open the border.
One thing that Kamala Harris expressed in the interview with Bret Baier is how she felt bad for the families that were impacted, but she hasn't reached out to the families. Mm-hmm. In fact, when Karine Jean-Pierre was asked, is the President of the United States going to reach out to these families, he continued to say, Karine Jean-Pierre, she continued to say that it was an ongoing investigation. Also, during the interview with Bret Baier, when he pressed her on these positions that she had when it comes to the border and decriminalizing and the gender-affirming care that the government pays for, she said that was a position that was held 5 years ago.
Right.
So is it now the position of the administration that positions that Donald Trump or things that y'all bring up in his past from 5 years ago, anything past 5 years should not be brought up in the conversation? It's just ridiculous.
Well, that's why, I mean, elections have consequences, and when you know that Rachel's death was preventable, that people here illegally are murdering. They murdered Laken Riley, Jocelyn Nungaray, Rachel Morin. Those were mentioned last night with Bret Baier. You hear the pleas of a mother. I mean, to lose your child, it would be so heartbreaking. And she said, I want to be happy again, and I can't be. But this was preventable, and that's what's so sad. Her daughter would be here, and those little ones, she had how many children? 5 children, is that right?
Something
5
like that.
Children. And those little ones are growing up without their mom because someone was here illegally.
Not right.
So going in, Kamala Harris knew that there were going to be a lot of questions about the border and migration, and she had some prepared answers. She knew, okay, whatever it is, I'm going to turn it around a couple of ways. One, I'm going to say what we were talking about a little while ago, and that is, well, on day one, we introduced this bill that would have fixed it. Of course, it was to give essentially a pathway to citizenship for 11 million people who are in the country illegally. The other thing that is getting a lot of play by the administrator, or rather by Kamala Harris while she's out and about, talking about the border. Whenever it comes to the border, she says, look, Donald Trump is the one who torpedoed the chance to come up with this bipartisan Senate bill. Here's the unfortunate truth for her regarding that. Rachel Morin was murdered over a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm. Before the bill even proposed.
And that's exactly right, because the bill was not killed until May of 2024, of this year. So had the bill passed, she would still be dead. Well, is the problem.
And as soon as they took office, Biden and Harris, they immediately signed all these executive orders to undo, to rescind all of the things that Donald Trump did at the border, including not continue the wall. They also got rid of Remain in Mexico. And in Remain in Mexico, if you're an asylum seeker and you want to come into our country, you have to remain in Mexico. And
that's why they call it that.
That's right. And you have to stay there until your case. And sometimes that could take years, but that way you're vetted. That way we know who's in the country. And it's
a huge issue for voters, and the administration has yet to have a response to that. Another issue is the fitness of the president, and they concealed them, and we saw it all. The whole world saw it on the debate stage of what happened. Now the reports started to leak about the fitness of the president and what's been happening behind closed doors. They took him off the ticket, replaced him with her. Well, she was asked about the fitness of the president, and when did she know it? When did she see it? Watch.
You
And
told
we
many
should all be
interviewers
concerned.
that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room, and he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And
but
Donald Trump
But
is.
you talked about it.
And Donald Trump
After George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security community, have all spoken out, even people who worked for him in the Oval Office, worked with him in the Situation Room, and have said he is unfit and dangerous and should never be president of the United States again, including his former vice president, which is why the job was open for him to choose another running mate. So that is a fact. That is a fact.
I know she wants to deflect this to Donald Trump, but does Donald Trump have some nuclear codes right now? It's Joe Biden, and it's the big lie. And she struggled to answer the question. First of all, it took her a while before she got to Joe Biden.
Right.
She was not prepared for this moment. And I know they just want to push this aside,
right,
but it's a real issue. She's lying still about the fitness of the current president of the United States.
She was trying to figure this segue to go from the question to what she wanted to say. You know, I don't know the timing regarding when she decided she was going to sit down with Bret. I know we all heard about it on Monday morning. I think a lot of what we heard last night, you know, she had to sit down for 26 minutes to essentially say one thing. And she had to say something that would clean up the mess that she made on The View last week. Because The View, which, you know, is super friendly venue, they said, can you think of anything that you would do differently if you were president? And she said, I can't think of anything.
Nothing comes to mind.
That was the mistake, because people don't like Joe Biden's administration.
Right. Well, then she doubled down on Stephen Colbert
That's
a few
right,
hours
that
later.
night.
Right. And so I think she went out there yesterday, faced the music. Bret asked her a lot of questions just to clean that up. Ultimately, she declared her independence from Joe last night, which we had not really seen. And she said her administration would not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And that's the soundbite the campaign for Kamala Harris wanted out there. So it's out there now. But you know what? It comes less than 3 weeks before the election. Does it make a difference? Is it too late?
I'm glad Bret pressed her on, well, you're in office, and you've been in office for 3.5 years. He said, you keep talking about turning the page. What do you mean turning the page? You were in office. And her response was, well, Donald Trump's been running.
Right.
And she said, you know what I mean. And he said, no, I really don't know much what you mean. What do you mean?
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.